You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 188, How to Love Yourself After a Breakup. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, Breakup Coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, beautiful Bravehearts. How is your day going? How are you doing? I want to start today's episode off really quickly with the fact that I'm going to be teaching a whole 4-day class on how to love yourself after a breakup. It's going to be called Self-Love Week. It's completely free. It is all-inclusive. I am looking to help those who might feel lost and maybe wanting to go from feeling lost to feeling loved. And maybe perhaps you've experienced a lot of loss in your life and it's left you feeling like, WTF, what is left here? And I am here to help you with it. I hope you join me. The link is going to be in the show notes to join. As soon as you join, you're going to get access to the Braveheart Academy so that you have the call dates and times and links, as well as the replays when they're made available. It will be taking place May 22nd through May 25th, and I hope I get to see you there. And if you want a deep dive workshop in this topic, I am actually going to be doing one inside of the Get Over Your Ex program, and that's happening on Wednesday. So I'd love to see you inside of there if you're just ready to go all in. But if not, that's fine. I'm doing the free workshop, which is going to be a 4-day workshop all about this topic, and we're going to deep dive there, and it's going to be phenomenal, okay? So today we're going to be talking about falling in love and loving yourself after a breakup. It's always seemed like a really fluffy topic to me, if I'm being really honest. And I have been much more centered around building the relationship with yourself, building a relationship with yourself that no one can tamper with, one where you always have your own back. And I love, love, love that. But after my engagement was called off with my miscarriage, I began to explore the concept of love, commitment, marriage, and I really did a deep dive into that topic. And throughout that experience, I found a psychoanalyst named Erich Fromm. I think that's how you say it. I have mixed feelings about him, but my dad introduced me to one of his books called The Art of Loving, and I was really intrigued by the way he talked about love. And I don't know if I don't know if I necessarily recommend the read, the actual book, but I really liked this specific part, and I'm going to talk to you about it and I'm going to teach you about it, okay? So the way he described love was similar to medicine, the art of medicine, and the book was called The Art of Loving. And he talks about how the art of medicine, you need to know the theory of medicine, right? A good doctor knows the theory of medicine. But to really know the art of medicine, you also have to practice medicine. And I kind of really loved this idea around love. There's the theory of love, and we kind of talk about that in a very fluffy way. And then there's the practice to love, which is much more about the actions and the things you do and how you show up in the world. But before I dive into what I want to teach today around this topic in this book, I want to talk about why loving yourself after a breakup is even important, or why you might want to love yourself after this experience. And I think many people talk about loving yourself, and it just makes me cringe just saying that, like, duh, loving yourself, obviously. But can we talk about it in a more tangible way? What does it mean? Why do we need to love ourselves? How? I have all of the questions, So let me just start with the way we think about love. Instead of thinking of love as something we just fall into or out of, or something that we give to another person, I hear that a lot, like, well, I don't want to give him my love. What if we remembered that love is a feeling that you experience or you don't experience it? meaning it's something we create with our thoughts. We experience love only when we are having loving thoughts about other people or ourselves. And I find it so fascinating because there's so many times people are in relationships and they're like, I just didn't feel loved. Meanwhile, the partner's like screaming at them saying, I love you. I told you I love you. And they don't feel loved because of the thoughts that they're having. And why do we want to love ourselves, specifically after a breakup? Okay, I've got a couple of reasons listed, and let's talk about all of them. The first one being, it feels good. You guys, it feels good to love. When we are truly thinking thoughts that make us feel love, the real feeling of love, we feel good. Regardless of whether the thoughts are about another person or ourselves or our life, when we think loving thoughts, we feel love, and that feels good. Love does not hurt. Hurtful thoughts hurt. So don't get them confused. The second thing, or the second reason I would say it's important to love ourselves after a breakup, is you enjoy life more. I want you to think about how you show up when you do feel loved. Right? When either you're loving another person or you're loving yourself, the experience of love, I'm kind to myself and others when I'm feeling love. I enjoy the present moment. I enjoy my life. I admire people and things and places in my life. I find the good in so many things, including myself. How you show up when you feel love towards yourself or anyone else for that matter, it looks very different than when you're feeling hurt. Right? There's that saying, hurt people, including themselves. It hurts when we hurt. It hurts when we hurt other people. It hurts when we hurt ourselves. A third reason I think it's important to love yourself after a breakup, and this is really the kicker of why I think it's important to love ourselves after a breakup or a divorce, is I find that the relationships you have with others is typically a direct reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. Exhibit A. If you really like yourself, you have really amazing loving thoughts about you. And then it's easier to have loving thoughts about other people. If you don't like yourself and you judge yourself and you have hurtful thoughts about you, you're going to be more likely to recognize that and see it in other people as well. Now, some of you might say, no, I have the inverse happen where I'm mean to myself and then I look at other people and see how amazing they are. Or I don't give, to myself in the way that I'm giving to everyone else, so much so that I have nothing left in my cup to give to me, and I've been giving to other people. And listen, I see you. I totally understand what you're saying, but there is an imbalance there or an incongruence, whereas when you really accept all parts of you, the good and the bad, and you really love yourself through that and have loving thoughts about yourself, there's a balance with your relationships. So much so you're able to be there for you and be giving and there for others in a variety of ways that feels good. It doesn't feel like that sacrificing or that imbalanced feeling. Okay. Lastly, I want to talk about the last reason of why it's important to love yourself after breakup. One of the main reasons I began exploring this topic was I was personally just feeling lost. I lost my baby, I lost my fiance, I lost my home, all in about a month and a half or 2 months maybe. And I was just like, what's left of me at this point? Who am I? I thought I was going to be a wife and a mother, home, like I had a home, and I had none of that anymore. And I think loving yourself takes you from that lost experience to feeling loved, regardless of your circumstances. And I just wanted to feel loved and cherished and held in a moment that felt very vulnerable and exposed for myself. And I was really, really forced in that moment to do that for myself in a way I had never done before. It was a very deep level of healing that I'm honestly super grateful for now. It wasn't always that way, and we'll talk about it more in the podcast, I'm sure. But the journey was from learning to love where I was and love who I am and love my life in that moment so that I, could come here and talk to you all about this experience, because it really changed the game for me. And I know that there are people out in the world Googling, like, how do I love myself after a breakup? But I think about when I was going through my breakup and divorce, I was really looking at a lot of symptoms and Googling those symptoms of how do I stop thinking about my ex? How do I, feel worthy again? And how do I, stop trying to reach out to my ex? And today's topic's it's very deep. I'll just preface it with that. It's deeper than the symptoms. But when you address loving yourself through your breakup in a tangible way, you will address those symptoms at the same time. So those are your whys. These are the why I might want to love myself after a breakup. Number 1, it feels good. Number 2, I get to enjoy my day-to-day life again. Number 3, I have healthy, more balanced relationships with others now and in my future. And number 4, I get to go from lost to loved. Okay? So here comes the how. But Dorothy, how though, right? And again, I haven't really talked a lot about loving yourself because to me, it sounds so fluffy. But let's talk about the how. And it's really about how do I go from lost to love? How do I, cultivate this relationship with myself and really love myself through this devastating experience? And the most simple answer I can give you is to begin thinking loving thoughts about yourself. Thoughts create feelings, my friends. The way you think will determine how you feel in your body, that experience in your body. So if you want to feel love towards yourself, or just feel love in general, maybe even towards your life, you have to think loving thoughts about yourself and your life, which is really hard to do. Trust me, I lost my baby, my fiance, and my house. My default thinking was not creating love. Another way to think about this is, why did you love your ex? You'll give me a list of optional thoughts that feel very true to you, and that's amazing. But are you thinking that way about yourself? So for example, my default thoughts about myself post miscarriage and called off engagement were, I don't matter. No one cares about me. I can't believe I got myself here. I'm the worst. I'm not okay. I'm a fucking mess. And of course, my body experience of that was not love. I didn't feel love towards myself. I didn't feel love towards my life. Okay, some intentional beliefs that I have migrated to as I became aware of those thoughts and questioned them with a coach, right, was I love that I have my back even through this. I love an epic comeback, and I am the queen of epic comebacks. I am worth it. I'm already successful. I love myself for giving myself the space I needed in so many areas of my life. And to be honest, there's so many moments. How do I say this? There's so many freeing moments where your life is completely burned down. When your life is completely burnt because that's what it felt like for me, completely burnt down, that's when those fun green sprouts of new plants pop up. And there's so much beauty in that. And so I really started thinking about, I love spring, and why do I love spring? And what if my life was spring right now? And what thoughts would I have about it? This total side note, just saying. Now, the cool thing was, once I started to learn the theory and practices from the Art of Loving book that I talked to you guys about earlier in this episode, was I love taking the things that I learned from that book. I made a measurement system out of it. I created tangible practices and actions to take to build my skill at loving, which I wanted to do for me, but I was also doing it for my relationship. How can I personally be better at loving? It's going to start with me, but I also know it's going to spread into my relationships. What is the action of loving, right? Because we talk a lot about thoughts and creating the feeling of loving, but when we're feeling loving, what are the actions that create even more love? Okay, so Erich Fromm says, love overcomes the sense of isolation and separateness, while at the same time, love permits one to be themselves, retain integrity, while not in isolation. This is super cool because you become one, yet you remain two. So you remove isolation and separateness while also getting to be your most authentic self. And that is what real love is. And he says love is an activity, which is funny, right? Because that an activity would also fall in the action area, right? So love is an activity, not an effect like fall for. So he's essentially saying love is an action. And remember, right? Thoughts create feelings, and those feelings fuel action, which is so great because we just talked about what thoughts you need to think to make you feel loved by yourself, right? You have to have loving thoughts about yourself and your life that will make you feel loved. And so now we get to learn, what is the action of loving yourself after a breakup? What does the activity of love look like? Now, he says love is giving, and there are 4 forms of giving. Love this, right? So love equals giving, and giving has 4 forms, which I'm going to teach you briefly today. And we're going to go way more in depth in the 4 days together in Self-Love Week, which is May 22nd through the 25th. So make sure to sign up. Link is going to be in the show notes. Now, when he says giving, he doesn't mean giving up or sacrificing yourself. He says that giving is the highest expression of love, which I think makes sense, right? Giving is normally an action that comes from the feeling of love. And remember when I talked about the imbalance? If you haven't given it to yourself first, there's an imbalanced feeling when you're giving to others. It feels more like sacrificing. So let's talk about the 4 forms of giving that we can practice to love ourselves after heartbreak. Number 1 is care. A mother who loves her baby cares for her baby. A woman who loves plants cares for her plants. The act of giving shows and demonstrates your love. It's an active care or concern for the person you love. In this situation we're talking about now is the active care or concern for yourself. Right? It's a labor and love. What you labor for, you love. And this reminds me of self-care. Self-love is not simply self-care, but I would say that self-care is a form of self-love. When we labor in taking care of ourselves, maybe it's meditating, journal, feeding ourselves, moving our bodies, we love. So cool, right? So care is number 1. Number 2 is responsibility. This is a form of giving. To be able to respond to the needs expressed or unexpressed by yourself, right? This is a voluntary act. Maybe it's feeding a baby, right? Baby cries, you feed baby. It's voluntary. You don't expect the baby to feed you back. This would be something as simple as responding to your own personal emotional needs, right? Self-soothing those urgent emotions like we talked about in the Urgent Emotions podcast episode. So number 1, care. Number 2, responsibility. Number 3, the 3rd form of giving is respect. And respect really means to look at and see the person as they are. You want the loved person to grow and unfold for their own sake, in their own ways, not for the purpose of serving you. What? Right? This reminds me of like allowing mistakes, to be aware of his or her unique individuality and wanting them to grow and unfold in their way. And I want you to think about this. How many of us actually allow ourselves to do this? Do you allow for mistakes in your life? Do you allow yourself to unfold in the way that you do and then respect yourself for it? My own personal experience has been the opposite. A lot of times I'm ready to go to beat myself up for doing something and unfolding in a specific way, instead of just saying, this is my own unique process and I'm going to respect myself for it. I'm going to see myself there and I'm going to be there for it. So we've got care, we've got responsibility, we've got respect, and the last form of giving is knowledge. Knowing the deeper meaning. And the example he says is there might be an angry man, and that angry man, if you just look at the surface, just looks like an angry man. But it may actually be insecurity and hurt, right? Deeper than the anger is insecurity and hurt. And he also talks about 2 different forms of knowledge. There can be the pulling apart, like a kid who's pulling apart the butterfly wings or pulling apart, I think of like science class. We're pulling apart the frog to figure out and learn the different ways or the different forms of the frog, versus with union and from love, knowing all forms of us together. And that's more of like a kind, gentler way of I have a knowledge of this person, and it comes from love, knowing we're all in this together because we're all humans and we're not pulling it apart or forcing pieces apart. And I feel like the question that I continuously asked myself, there's a number of questions, but I'll give you two here today, is I would ask myself, do I know the root cause of my problems? Am I looking at the root cause of my problems? And am I asking others what's wrong with me? Right? Do I pick myself to pieces, or do I explore it from union and love, knowing myself and all of humanness? Now, we have those 4 forms, right? So we've got care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. And all of those are forms of giving. And that's the activity of love. Now, all of these have to work together. The author mentions that responsibility could easily deteriorate into domination and possessiveness if it weren't for respect, which makes sense, right? So to go from lost to loved and really work on the how to loving yourself after a breakup, I want you to do 2 things. Number 1, look at the thoughts you have about yourself. Begin to think loving thoughts about you as a person and about your life. Speak lovingly to you. The second thing you need to do is take one of these components. I know that we covered 4, but I just want you to take one this week. Take one of these components of giving and look at, what could I do to improve this area? What is a form of giving in this area to myself? How could I improve this for myself based off of the information I gave you? And I guess one more step is to sign up for the free self-love week that we're going to be doing, where I'll be teaching this way more in depth. We'll spend a day on each one and give you examples for each. We're going to learn how to score yourself. I'll be teaching you the formula. It's going to be so fun and such a beautiful reset for any of you who are deep in heartbreak, who might feel lost right now, or even if you're just wanting a little bit more love in your life. I'm so excited to lead you through this, but I really am very excited about this concept. It's something that I've been working on for the past couple of months with myself, and I just feel so much better in my own bones. Okay, all right, Bravehearts. Learn to love yourself after a breakup because 1, it feels good. 2, you enjoy life more. 3, you're going to have better relationships. And 4, you get to go from lost to love. And the way to do that is 1, think loving thoughts about yourself and your life. And 2, take action in the form of giving. And you can give in 4 different ways to yourself, right? Care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge of yourself. I love you, my beautiful brave hearts. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast for more episodes like this. And if you found any of our episodes helpful, we'd really love a written review on the Apple Podcast app to help other heartbroken humans turn their pain into power and their heartbreak into happy. I love you, Braveheart. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.